Blood smeared across the starship deck, dark and slick against the silver alloy flooring. Commander Ethan Kalin pushed himself to his knees, lungs burning as the emergency sirens pulsed crimson light through the shattered corridor. Beyond the cracked viewport, the void was alive with silent flashes ships exploding in distant bursts, bright as dying stars. The enemy's dreadnought loomed like a black blade against the stars, cutting through what was left of their joint strike force. We're not making it out alive. The thought struck with the cold certainty of death. His pulse roared in his ears, drowning out the metallic groan of the ship tearing itself apart. He reached for his sidearm, though he knew it wouldn't matter. Human, move. The voice was a low snarl behind him, deep, resonant, and laced with command. He turned, heart stuttering as the figure strode through the smoke. Veiri. Even among the Zereth, she was striking taller than any human, clad in battle-scorched armor that hugged her lithe, powerful frame. Her silver-black hair was bound high, streaked with dust and blood, and her skin glimmered faintly under the flickering lights, the mark of her lineage. Her golden eyes burned, unblinking, cutting through the chaos like twin suns. She moved with lethal grace, a plasma blade in one hand and a shattered support beam in the other. He'd seen Zereth warriors before, aloof, efficient, merciless, but Veiri radiated something more dangerous. Command. Commander Kalin, she said, her voice like steel sliding across stone. Stand or die here. Your choice. Before he could answer, the deck buckled violently. Explosive decompression roared through the corridor as the hull split open like a wound. Air screamed out into the void, dragging debris and Ethan toward the darkness beyond. His fingers clawed at the jagged metal edge, but his grip slipped, blood smearing the surface. Stars spun wildly in his vision, sharp and cold, so close he could almost fall into them. Then dash impact. A force slammed into him, hard enough to drive the breath from his lungs. For a split second, he thought the void had taken him. But no, the weight pinning him down was warm, solid. His ears rang with the muffled thud of a blast door slamming shut, cutting off the howl of escaping atmosphere. When his vision cleared, he saw her, Veiri. She was above him, her armored frame braced against the floor, shielding him completely. Her breathing was harsh, a guttural rasp in her throat, but her arms formed an unbreakable cage around him. Ethan blinked, dazed. You saved. Silence. The word cracked like a whip, but her voice trembled almost imperceptibly. Not from weakness, he realized, but from something else. Her body was heavy on his, not crushing, but closer than any Zereth should ever be to a human. Their people didn't touch except in combat or death. And yet, here she was, blood staining her cheek, her golden eyes burning down into his like molten suns. For a heartbeat, the war outside didn't exist. There was only the rise and fall of her breath, the smell of ozone and blood, the weight of her shielding him, as if his life mattered. Why? The question tangled in his throat, but he never spoke it. He didn't need to. Because when her gaze locked with his, something flickered there, something fierce, forbidden, and far more dangerous than the enemy outside. Not duty, not honor. Something else. Something that could break them both. And in that moment, Ethan Kalin knew the battle that had changed everything wasn't the one raging beyond the hull. It was the one that had just begun inside. Her golden eyes, Ethan, woke to the muted hum of medical systems and the faint sting of antiseptic in the air. His first sensation was the weight pressing against his chest, not physical, but heavy all the same. Memory flooded back in fragments. The roar of decompression, the wrenching pull of the void, the feel of armored arms locking around him like steel bands. And her face. Those molten gold eyes seared into his mind like twin suns. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the soft glow of the medbay lights. Zereth architecture was all sharp lines and pale metals, as cold and imposing as the species themselves. He lay on a diagnostic slab, sensors crawling over his skin like icy insects. Above him, an unfamiliar symbol pulsed across the curved ceiling. Zereth's sigil, etched in stark black against the white alloy. To one side, a figure stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind her back. Vaer, her presence dominated the room like a silent storm. Even standing motionless, she radiated an energy that made the sterile chamber feel too small, too tight. Her armor was gone, replaced by a dark commander's tunic that still bore the dust and blood of battle. A long scar ran from the hollow of her throat to her jaw, stark against the smooth metallic sheen of her skin. She did not look at him immediately, her eyes fixed on the viewport beyond, where the wounded ship drifted in silent space like a beast clawed half to death. Ethan swallowed, throat dry. "You're still here." Those golden eyes slid toward him, slow and deliberate. "You regained consciousness," she said, her voice flat, almost mechanical. "The medtech reported you would live. Thanks to you." He pushed up on one elbow, ignoring the protest of his ribs. "You saved my life." Something flashed across her face, too quick for him to name. And it was gone, replaced by that same cold veneer. "A warrior repays her debts." He frowned. "Debts? I miscalculated during the initial breach," she said evenly. "Had I executed my role with precision, you would not have been exposed to decompression. Your injury was a result of my failure." Ethan stared at her. "So that's why you dragged me out of a collapsing corridor? To settle an account?" Her jaw tightened. "Yes." He almost laughed, almost. Except there was nothing amusing. In the rigid set of her shoulders, the razor-wire tension coiling in every line of her body. "You risked your life for me," he said slowly, "and you're standing here acting like you're balancing a ledger." Her gaze snapped to him, sharp as a blade. "Do not mistake this for sentiment, human." The word dripped from her tongue, like something bitter. "Among the Zereth, failure demands atonement. I have done so. There is nothing more." But Ethan wasn't fooled, not by the chill in her tone, nor the perfection of her posture. He'd seen something when she'd thrown herself over him. Not duty, not cold honor. Something raw and unguarded, burning bright in her eyes for the briefest flicker of time. He sat up fully, swinging his legs over the edge of the slab. "Funny thing," he murmured, holding her gaze. "You keep saying it was about failure. Atonement, protocol." His lips curved in a half-smile. "But when you were lying on top of me, shielding me from being torn into the void, you weren't thinking about rules." Vary's breath hitched, so faint he almost missed it. Her hands tightened behind her back, knuckles whitening against obsidian skin. Her voice faltered for the first time, a fracture in steel. Then she caught herself, straightened, and turned away sharply, her movements snapping like a whip. "Rest," she commanded, as if the word could close the distance between them, seal the crack in her composure. "You will need strength for the next cycle." "Very." He spoke her name softly, like testing the weight of it on his tongue. She froze at the threshold, back rigid, every line of her body carved from iron. But she didn't look back. For a long moment, silence stretched thick, electric. Then her voice came, low and rough, almost lost to the hum of machines. "Do not thank me again, human." Her shoulders stiffened as if bracing for impact. "I am not worthy of such things." And then she was gone, leaving the door whispering shut behind her, and Ethan staring after her with a strange, unsettling certainty curling through his chest. This wasn't over. Not even close. The observation deck was quiet, eerily so, for a ship still bleeding from the wounds of battle. Beyond the curved viewport, the void stretched endless and unbroken, a sea of ink speckled with cold, indifferent stars. Ethan stood there for a long time, one hand braced against the glass as if he could steady himself against the enormity of it all. The hum of the ship's struggling systems whispered through the silence like a failing heartbeat. He heard her before he saw her. The sound was subtle, a measured footfall, soft against the alloy deck, but something about it sent a prickle of awareness across his skin. Veri moved like shadow-made flesh, each step deliberate, controlled, betraying nothing. Yet when she entered the pool of starlight spilling through the viewport, Ethan couldn't help but stare. She wasn't in armor tonight. Instead, a dark command tunic hugged her frame, unadorned except for the insignia at her collar, a mark of rank and responsibility heavy enough to crush most beings. Her silver-black hair, usually bound in severe braids, spilled loose around her shoulders, glimmering faintly like a river of starlight. The sight of her like this, unarmored, unmasked, stole his breath. Commander Kalen. Her voice carried that same steel edge, but softer now, lacking the bite it wore on the battlefield. Almost hesitant. Almost human. Ethan, he corrected gently, turning to face her. We've fought side by side. You've saved my life. Seems like we can skip the formalities. Her golden eyes fixed on him, unblinking, their glow muted by the low light. Names carry weight among my kind, she said. Too much familiarity can be dangerous. For you, he said quietly. Or for me. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite a denial. She moved closer, her reflection merging with his in the viewport until it looked like they were both suspended in the void, two fragile lives clinging to an indifferent universe. You shouldn't be here, she murmured, her gaze flicking. To the star field beyond. The observation deck is for command staff. Your command staff, Ethan said, leaning against the railing. I figured if you're here, it can't be forbiddance. Her silence stretched. Then finally, why? Do you come here human? He tilted his head, considering her. Because it reminds me why we fight. Out there, it's infinite, beautiful, full of places worth bleeding for. He hesitated, studying the tension carved into her posture, the way her hands curled into fists at her sides. Why do you come here, Veri? A muscle jumped in her jaw. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than a whisper. To remember what I will never touch. Ethan's chest tightened. You've been to a dozen systems. You've seen more of the galaxy than I ever will. Her golden eyes turned to him then, bright and raw, and he realized he'd been wrong. He'd seen her fight with fury, command. With fire, but this was naked truth, stripped of every weapon, every wall. I have seen, she said slowly, but never belonged. I was bred for war, for dominance. Our bonds. Her voice faltered. They require strength, control, the capacity to break what resists you. I lacked these. I failed my trials. They said I was unfit. Her fingers curled tighter, nails biting into her palms. Unworthy to take a mate. Unworthy to bear the bloodline forward. Ethan stared at her, stunned. So you've spent your whole life believing that? That you're what? Defective? She flinched as if he'd struck her. Her next words spilled like shards of glass. Do not mock me, human. You cannot understand. I am not worthy of your intimacy. The silence that followed was a living, thing-thick, pulsing, charged. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs, loud in the stillness. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped closer until the heat of her body brushed his skin. She didn't move, but he saw the flicker of her pulse in the hollow of her throat, quick and unsteady. You think worth is something they get to decide? He said, his voice low, steady. You think strength is breaking things? Control? No. Strength is what you did for me. Strength is standing against everything they told you to be, and still fighting anyway. His hand lifted, slow enough for her to stop him, and brushed an errant strand of silver-black hair from her cheek. And if you want the truth, Veery, his gaze held hers, unwavering. You're the most worthy person I've ever met. Her breath caught sharp, involuntary. For a heartbeat, something flickered in her golden eyes. Hunger, fear, hope. Then she turned away so fast, it felt like a blade slicing the air. You speak of things you do not understand, she said, her voice brittle as ice. Leave this place. Ethan didn't move. No, he said softly. Not until you believe me. Her fists clenched. Her shoulders trembled once, then stilled, like a storm forced back behind iron gates. When she spoke again, it was barely more than a whisper, so quiet he almost missed it. Then you'll be waiting a very long time. And she was gone, leaving him staring after her, heart pounding, certain of only one thing. Whatever battle he had just stepped into, it would be the hardest fight of his life. Asterisk. The corridor stank of ion discharge and burned metal, the sharp tang of war that lingered long after the last shots were fired. Ethan adjusted the tactical harness across his chest, its unfamiliar weight pressing into bruised ribs, and glanced at the towering figure beside him. Veery was silent, golden eyes fixed. Ahead, her face a mask of steel. But he could feel the tension radiating from her in waves, coiled so tightly it hummed in the air between them. They were alone now. No backup, no rescue. Just the two of them walking into enemy territory, on a mission no sane soldier would volunteer. 4. The briefing replayed in Ethan's mind as they approached the docking bay. Enemy forces had taken control of a remote supply outpost, a critical node in the Zereth human supply chain. Retaking it required infiltration, and the scanners guarding its inner rings would identify every unbonded warrior as a potential spy. Zereth tech didn't lie. It read neurochemical sync patterns, which meant only one thing: they had to pose as a bonded pair. He'd seen Veery's reaction when the command issued the directive. That razor-straight posture, the flare of her nostrils, the split-second flicker of something almost like panic in her eyes. Then the steel shutters slammed down, her voice clipped and cold as she said, "Understood." Now, walking beside her, Ethan risked a glance. She looked carved from obsidian, every muscle drawn tight beneath the matte black infiltration suit. Her hands flexed against her thighs, as if resisting the urge to curl into fists. "You okay?" he asked, breaking the silence. Her head snapped toward him, eyes flashing. "Your question is irrelevant. Focus on the mission." "Just trying to make conversation," he said lightly. "We're about to pretend we're closer than most people ever get. Might as well get comfortable." Her jaw clenched. "Do not speak of it." But he couldn't help himself. "Why not?" He pressed, softly. "Because you don't want to think about it? Or because you already are?" She froze mid-step. For a long, taut second, she just stared at him, and in that silence, Ethan felt the war outside shrink to nothing. Her gaze pinned him like a predator, deciding whether to strike or flee. Then, without a word, she turned and strode into the bay, her long stride slicing the distance like a blade. The enemy station loomed ahead, a skeletal silhouette against the burning rings of a gas giant. Inside the cramped shuttle, the heat of Veery's presence pressed against Ethan like a second skin. Zereth infiltration harnesses were built for two, but barely. Their shoulders touched, their legs brushed, and every time the shuttle jolted, his hand slid against the firm line of her thigh. He felt her shudder. Just once. Then she stilled like stone, but her breath betrayed her sharper, faster than before. "You're trembling," he murmured. "I "Am not," she said, her voice tight as a bowstring. "Sure," he said softly, leaning closer, letting his words graze her ear. "Because this means nothing to you." Her head whipped toward him, eyes blazing gold fire in the dim light. "You think this is a game, human?" she hissed. "You think I do not understand what is required? I will do what must be done to complete this mission." "And what's that?" His voice dropped, low and even. "Pretend you want me? Or admit that maybe, just maybe you already do?" Something cracked then, not a sound, but a silence breaking wide open. Her breath caught audibly. For a heartbeat, Ethan swore he saw it in her eyes. The hunger, fierce and wild, fighting to surface through a lifetime of chains. Then, the shuttle jolted hard as docking clamps engaged, snapping the moment like shattered glass. "Stay close," she said, her voice stripped raw now, stripped of pretense. "And do not speak again unless I tell you to." The airlock hissed open. The heat between them lingered like a live wire as they stepped into hostile ground, two warriors bound by necessity. And something far more dangerous than war. The scanners glowed crimson, wrapping them in shimmering light as alien glyphs scrolled across the console. Ethan held still, his pulse thrumming like a drumbeat in his ears. The tech wouldn't be fooled by proximity alone. It wanted proof, chemical, neural, undeniable. Very turned to him slowly. Her face was a mask of control, but her her eyes burned like twin suns about to collapse into fire. "This will work," she said, as if reciting a battle oath. Then her hands caught his face, strong and unyielding, and her mouth crashed against his. The world detonated. There was nothing clinical about it. No calculated mimicry for the sake of scanners. This kiss was war violent, searing, raw with needs strangled too long. Her breath mingled with his in harsh, ragged bursts. Her claws scraped against his jaw as if carving him into her memory. And Ethan, God help him, kissed her back like his life depended on it. Maybe it did. When the scanner chimed green, she tore away, chest heaving, eyes wide with something he'd never seen before. "Very," he began. Not a word, she rasped, her voice shaking like a blade in a storm. But the damage was done. One kiss, and the lie had become truth. And Ethan knew if the mission didn't kill them, this would. Asterisk, the medbay smelled of blood and ozone, a metallic tongue that clung to the air like a second skin. Emergency lights pulsed crimson against the polished walls, and the rhythmic hiss of auto-injectors struggled to mask the chaos pounding in Ethan's chest. Very lay on the slab, her obsidian skin streaked with black-silver blood. The infiltration suit was slashed open, exposing deep wounds that ran like molten fissures down her side. Her breathing came harsh and ragged, each inhale a battle in itself. The medtech drones hovered anxiously, their slender limbs moving with clinical precision, but Ethan barely saw them. All he saw was her. She'd saved him again, thrown herself between him and the plasma charge meant to tear him apart. No hesitation, no calculation, just raw, reckless instinct. For him. Move. Ethan barked at the drones, pushing past them. "You're too damn slow." His hands shook as he grabbed the sterile gauze from the tray and pressed it to her side. Her blood was hot against his fingers, slick and unyielding. Asterisk. Golden eyes cracked open, hazy with pain, but still burning. "You disobey orders," she rasped, her voice jagged as broken glass. "Always." "And you keep saving my ass," he shot back, his throat tight. "Looks like we both have. Bad habits." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. But then a shudder ran through her body, and her head fell back against the slab, sweat beading along her temple. Ethan swallowed hard, pressing harder to staunch the bleeding. "Stay with me, Very?" His voice broke on her name. "You hear me?" You don't get to check out now. Not after all this. Her lashes fluttered. For a long, terrible moment, he thought she was slipping under. Then slowly, painfully, her gaze dragged to his, molten gold locking on blue like a lifeline. Why? Her breath hitched, trembling. Why do you fight so hard for me? Because you're worth it, he said without hesitation. The words ripped out of him, raw and unvarnished. Because you're more than what they told you. More than some twisted idea of strength. Because, damn it, I can't lose you. Something flickered across her face, then something fragile, fractured, breaking through the armor she'd worn like skin. Her voice was barely a whisper when she said, "You do not understand?" "Then make me," he urged, leaning close, his breath mingling with hers. "Help me understand." Her hands moved slow, trembling, gripping his wrists with surprising strength. "I was chosen once," she said, the words like poison dragged from a wound, promised to a bondmate. "He rejected me before the rite, said I was flawed, that I lacked the fire, that I could not dominate him, could not break him as our kind demands." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she squeezed her eyes shut. They all saw. They all knew. My shame became legend. Ethan's gut twisted, a white-hot surge of fury flaring in his chest. "So you've been carrying this garbage they fed you, for what? Your whole life?" Her eyes opened again, and the vulnerability in them nearly undid him. "You do not understand," she whispered, tears glimmering like molten gold. "Among my people, intimacy is conquest, power, approving of strength. And I failed. I am unworthy to take, unworthy to be taken." Ethan's breath left him in a slow, shaking exhale. He cupped her face with blood-streaked hands, forcing her to see him, to hear him. "Listen to me," he said, voice rough, trembling with conviction. "You are not unworthy. You are the strongest damn person I've ever known. Not because you can dominate, not because you can break, but because you can choose to protect, to care, to give when the whole damn galaxy tells you not to." He leaned closer, forehead pressing to hers, his voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "I don't want a conqueror, Vary. I want you. Exactly as you are." Her breath hitched, her body shivering under his touch. "Ethan?" His name broke from her lips like a prayer. She didn't believe she was allowed to say what his mouth found. Hers before fear could steal the moment. This kiss wasn't like the first desperate, staged for scanners. This was real searing, a promise forged in blood and fire. She clutched at him, claws biting into his sleeves, pulling him closer like drowning and needing air. And he gave her everything, every breath, every heartbeat, every piece of himself. When they finally broke apart, her tears streaked her face, but her voice was steady when she whispered, "Why? Would you claim what is broken?" Ethan framed her face with his hands, his blue eyes blazing like twin suns against the darkness. "Because you're not broken," he said, fierce and unyielding. "You're extraordinary, and if they can't see that, screw them. I see you, all of you." For the first time, she didn't look away, didn't hide. And in the golden depths of her gaze, Ethan saw the truth at last. This war wasn't just for survival. It was for her soul, and he was damn sure he was going to win. The council chamber was a cathedral of steel and starlight, its vaulted ceiling arching high above, like the ribs of some vast cosmic beast. The walls glimmered with etched sigils, Zereth words of law and lineage, rigid as the warriors who sat beneath them. A semicircle of silver-armored figures loomed over the chamber floor, their golden eyes burning like judgment, made flesh. The center, restrained by ceremonial bindings of braided alloy, knelt Vary. Her head was bowed, black silver hair spilling forward to shield her face. But Ethan could feel the tension vibrating through her, like a predator chained and humiliated. Before the pack, the gleam of her battle scars caught the harsh light, a cruel reminder of the path that had led her here. Her crime, not treason, not failure on the field, but something far worse in Zirith's eyes. She had chosen intimacy with a human. The High Prime rose from his obsidian throne, towering even by Zirith's standards, his armor engraved with 1,000 generations of victory. His voice rolled like thunder. Vary of the Bloodforge line. You stand accused of violating the oaths of purity, of defiling your caste and dishonoring your blood. For this, the sentence is exile beyond the veil. His eyes glinted like molten suns. You will die nameless, mateless, forgotten. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, hard and cold as knife edges. Ethan felt his blood ignite. Every muscle in his body screamed to move, to tear those bindings from her wrists, to put himself between her and their venom. But Vary spoke first. I accept the judgment, she said, her voice flat, stripped bare of all pride. As I have always been, unworthy. Something broke in him at those words, shattered. He didn't remember crossing the floor, didn't register the shocked gasps as he strode into the circle of light. Only when a dozen plasma spears leveled at his chest did he stop, his pulse roaring like a war drum. Stand down, he said, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Or kill me where I stand, because I'm not leaving without. Kerr, gasps turned to snarls. The High Prime's voice cracked like a thunderclap. You dare, human? This is not your council. You have no claim. Ethan lifted his head, meeting that molten glare with eyes like tempered steel. No claim? His voice was low, but every word hit like a detonator. Read your own laws, Prime. The Lex Ultima. The right of blood oath. A ripple of unease swept through the council ancient words, stirring dust long settled. The Primes. Lip curled. That law is dead. Your sigils say otherwise. Ethan stepped closer, past the line of leveled spears, his voice rising with every word. It says, any warrior who saves another life twice may invoke the right, may claim. A soul bond that supersedes caste, blood, or species. His jaw clenched. She saved me, twice, and I'm invoking it. Here, now. The chamber exploded in uproar, voices clashing like steel, counselors surging to their feet in outrage. Through it all, Vary lifted her head slowly, golden eyes, wide with something raw and trembling. Ethan? Her voice cracked like breaking ice. What are you doing? What I should have done the moment you said you were unworthy, he said, never looking away from her, proving you're not. He dropped to one knee before her, ignoring the stunned cries, and took her bound hands in his own. The cold alloy bit into his palms, but he didn't care. His voice softened not for them, but for her alone. You think you're broken, that you failed their twisted idea of strength. But you're the strongest damn person I've ever met. His thumb brushed over her scarred knuckles, reverent as a prayer. So hear me, Vary of the Bloodforge line. Before your people, before the stars themselves, I claim you, not as conquest, not as tradition, but because I love you. The uproar died like a severed pulse. Silence crashed down heavy as a guillotine. Vary stared at him, breath shuddering. In her eyes, 1,000 storms broke fear, fury, longing, disbelief. Slowly, trembling, she whispered, You would risk your life? For this? For you, he said simply. Every time. The Prime's voice was a blade drawn in fury. This abomination will not stand. It will, Ethan roared, surging to his feet and turning on the council with a fire that burned through bone. Because the only thing more dangerous than your laws is the truth. And the truth is this. Your greatest warrior risked everything for someone you called beneath her. Your code didn't make her strong. She did that herself. And if that strength isn't worthy of your respect, then your empire deserves to crumble. The chamber vibrated with rage and shock. And then slowly, impossibly, the Prime raised his hand. Silence fell like a falling star. His eyes, molten and merciless, locked on Veri. Do you accept this claim? Veri's breath caught. Her gaze flicked to Ethan, this stubborn, reckless human who had shattered her chains with nothing but words and impossible faith. And for the first time, she let the walls fall completely. Yes, she whispered. Her voice was steady now, strong. I accept. The bindings fell away with a hiss. The council erupted again, but Ethan didn't hear it because she was in his arms, fierce and trembling, her lips crashing to his in a kiss that burned like a nova. Cheers and curses blurred into static as her claws curled into his jacket, and his hands anchored her like gravity itself. When they broke apart, breathless, golden eyes blazing with tears and fire, she whispered the words that undid him completely. I was never unworthy. I just needed someone to show me. He smiled, raw and aching with love. And I'll keep showing you, he said, his forehead resting against hers as the stars burned bright beyond the viewport. For the rest of my life, and for the first time in Zereth history, intimacy wasn't about conquest. It was about freedom, about love, about two souls, alien and human, choosing each other against a universe that told them they shouldn't. Because in the end, the law that truly mattered was written in their hearts. The end.